Welcome to the Button List podcast, coming at you live from Beating Dreams in Dallas, Texas, featuring Allison
and Heather. During this broadcast, we will delve into the stories of famous gemstones, past and present, looking to amuse, delight, and possibly disturb you.
We record live weekly, and we invite you to join in the online conversation every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Central Time on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube.
Just a warning, sometimes we get a little spicy.
Please be aware that the following broadcast may contain mature content.
Thank you for supporting small businesses.
And we hope you enjoy our show.
Okay, so we're gonna be continuing on with the Hope Diamonds this evening, but I just want to say right off the bat that I had no idea that today was National Otter Day, and I feel so caught out that I didn't know that today was National Otter Day because I love otters because they're so cute.
They are
utterly adorable.
They are utterly adorable.
So cheers to all the otters out there who are watching our podcast, and I will properly reverence you next year on National Otter Day.
Absolutely.
So Heather, what are we starting with this evening? So when last we left our hero, aka the diamond, we'd covered all the facts, and now we're into spilling the tea of the idiosyncrasies and.
Oh, that's a nice word.
It's a great word, isn't it?
It is. It's a great word, and
the idiosyncrasies of the owners of the Hope Diamond, because we are still on. I know it's been a minute, but we're still on part 2 of our Hope Diamond podcast. So let's go ahead and kick it off with the diamond's namesake, Henry Philip Hope.
So Henry Philip Hope was born in the 18th century. He was one of 3 brothers: Thomas, who was an artist and virtuoso; Adrian, who was mysterious.
Literally, the book says he's mysterious.
He died with no wife and no children, and left Henry Philip Hope £500,000 at that point, which in today's money is 60.7 million pounds.
Wow, that's a lot of pounds.
It is a lot of pounds. And Henry Philip Hope was a stone collector. He was one of the premier stone collectors of his day.
Like rocks from the garden. So.
No, you were talking like he collected cut precious stones. And he was not only one of the best stone collectors of his day, he's known as one of the best in the history of the world. And not all of them were cursed, but you know.
I mean, I think
I guess it depends on who you ask.
When you're trying to sell them to Evelyn Walsh McLean.
Well, that's true.
But anyway.
So he purchased the diamond from Daniel Eliason, or Elias. I'm not sure how to say his name.
There were no.
So Henry Philip Hope was the descendant of merchant bankers, so he was an heir for the Hope Bank, even though he was not a banker. He was.
Got it.
He was a collector of, instead of money, he was a collector of other expensive things. So his uncle, Henry Hope, was offered a title by Catherine the Great, and he said, no, thank you. And so instead of a title, she gave him a picture instead. So that was exciting. So he was such a good collector of stones that he was written up by multiple contemporaries, and is known throughout history as one of the most important amassers of stone wealth.
Is amassers actually a verb?
It is.
I made it up.
I didn't say. I said amassers like the noun.
Oh, okay.
I
don't know that it's actually
amassing is yes.
I don't know that was grammatically correct, Heather.
I like to make things up, okay?
We're gonna call you Heather Shakespeare.
Yes, thanks.
Hi,
so Henry Philip Hope also never married. like his mysterious brother Adrian. And so he had 3 nephews that he left a lot of money to. I mean, a lot of estate. Yes, world's best stoner is what Henry Philip Hope was. His nephew Henry Thomas Hope was the one who inherited the gem collection. Henry Thomas Hope was married and had a daughter named Henrietta Adela. Now, the interesting part here is that Henrietta Adela was born in 1843, and Henry Thomas Hope married baby mama in 1851. So that was kind of interesting. But what he did by marrying baby mama in 1851 is he legitimized Henrietta, and so she was able to marry a nobleman, which then continues the rest of the story there. Henry Thomas Hope was quite an interesting fellow on his own. I mean, he was an MP, and he did a whole lot of work in Parliament and all that other stuff. And he displayed the Hope Diamond along with the Koh-i-Noor at the Crystal Palace at the Great Exhibition of the Works of All Nations, colloquially known as the Great Exhibition or just the Crystal Palace Exhibition, which happened in 1851. He helped coordinate that. And interestingly enough, the event was sponsored by Schweppes. Even in 1851. I told you I was adding some good flavor. So
Seriously.
Possibly the first event sponsored by a soft drink, sponsored by the world's first soft drink. So Henry Thomas Hope died at the age of 54. Henrietta legitimized Henrietta at the age of 8, had married and produced 5 children.
She just appeared out of whole cloth.
Yeah.
At age 8. Legitimate and fabulous.
So she had 5 kids with the nobleman that she married, and Henry Thomas Hope's widow left the diamond to Henrietta's second son. But the caveat was that when he came into his majority, he had to take the Hope name.
I'm sorry, this name is...
It is a lot.
It's a lot.
So his name, instead of being what he was born with, became Henry Francis Hope Pelham Clinton Hope. Hope was in there twice officially, somehow. So he was also the 8th Duke of Newcastle-under-Lyne. So he, second son was a duke. That's how powerful Henrietta's husband was.
I'm sorry, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He had 6 names.
He had a lot
of names.
And then, I mean, even his dukedom was Newcastle-under-Lyne. I mean, that's... So most of the...
So yes, Hope was actually their family name.
Yes, Hope was their name. Most of the records involving Henry Francis Hope Pelham Clinton Hope were destroyed in the Blitz. So the London bombings of 1940 destroyed a whole lot of written history, unfortunately. So
Sorry.
So we don't have a whole lot of information about him other than, he had a whole lot of names. But he definitely had interesting choice in brides, didn't he?
All right, so we are going to go to another very, very dramatic personality associated with the Hope Diamond, and that is Mary Augusta Yohe, who was an actress. She worked in burlesque.
Because it was Yohe with an apostrophe.
Got it.
I mean, accent. Apostrophe. I'm fired.
Exostrophe? I don't know. Anyway, so she was an actress. She worked in burlesque, and as a chorus girl, she actually was sponsored by some fairly influential people in the money scene and scandalized them by, instead of pursuing a serious acting career, she went to burlesque and, of course, girls. She was a contralto and was labeled, for better or for worse, by the press at the time as the girl with the foghorn voice.
Yep, sounds like a contralto. Yeah.
But so she married Lord Francis in 1894. Now, in 1894, Lord Henry Francis Hope, Pelham Clinton Hope, was not doing so well financially, and he was kind of scrabbling at the last little bits of potential for income when he married Madcap May, which was her nickname, and he went bankrupt in 1895. So it was like, hey, happy wedding, Madcap May, 1894, happy bankruptcy, 1895. So Lord Francis was not...
You have to have a weird cake for that one.
Right?
No cake at all.
Yeah. So Lord Francis was not doing well financially. And so all of the things that he had inherited from the family were in... I can't remember what they actually called it, but essentially they were in a trust. So he had to get permission from either his family or the government in order to sell assets to make money. So he was trying at this time to get permission from the British government to sell some of the paintings that he had inherited from his great uncle Thomas Hope, the artist and virtuoso. I think that was his great uncle. Anyway.
Well, also as a duke, most of his possessions would have been entailed. So that's an issue with nobility, especially at that point. Like, nobility's titles were getting consolidated, and therefore fewer families were funding the titles, and nobility wasn't supposed to work, so they couldn't get any money, and yeah, it was a whole thing going on at that time.
So Sir Francis was trying at that point to sell some of the art that he had inherited. May was currently enjoying great success on the stage and was actually contributing a fair amount of money to the pair's upkeep. Sir Francis was finally able to acquire permission is what I'm looking for, to sell some of the art, but unfortunately his debts were so great that the sale of the artwork left him a little better off than he was before. So
no money, just fewer debts.
Yeah, it's just basically he was just like chucking money into the great abyss. So then Sir Francis tried to sell the Hope diamond because the paintings obviously weren't doing it. So, but he was unable, again, for quite a while, to get the rights to sell due to the rest of the family wishing to retain the diamond. Finally, in 1901, Sir Francis received permission from, I believe, the British government to sell the Hope diamond. Now, meanwhile, on the continent, Madcap May has started a madcap affair with Putnam Bradley Strong.
Well,
because I mean that definitely.
Who else would you start a madcap affair with?
I mean, Strong.
Someone named Putnam.
I don't know. Just like does Strong counteract Putnam? Like, is it
a little?
So,
but is it Bradley spelled with two E's? Because
it actually is.
Because I really feel like that is definitely on the side of Putnam.
So as Madcap May is having her madcap affair with Mr. Strong, eventually May and Sir Francis divorced in 1902 because obviously Mr. Strong was, not great for their marriage, shockingly.
Not great for their marriage.
Well, the whole extramarital affair thing. So Sir Francis actually did remarry in 1904, but tragically, his new wife died only 8 years after they wed. And this is where we're kind of going to start to feed in a little bit of froth about the curse of the Hope diamond. Like, and you're going to go back to, like, they stole it from the eye of an idol, and seriously, like, what famous gemstone hasn't been stolen from the eye of an idol? Because apparently all of them have been. But okay, there's a freaking gnat and it's driving me crazy. Sorry.
Special guest star.
Special guest star until I like inhale it, and that's going to be real fun. But so we're starting to see the kind of bedrock kind of seeds of the curse of the Hope Diamond, because May, she had this unhappy marriage with Sir Francis Hope, and then now Sir Francis, who retained possession of the diamond after their divorce. Now his new wife has died, and May didn't actually work out with Strong either. Strong sold all of May's jewelry without her consent, and
So fancy.
and the couple divorced in 1910. So currently we're at the point where all of these very fortunate and wealthy people are experiencing a lot of hardship, and it's being set up that the diamond is set up to take the fall, Heather. It's a fall diamond. Yeah. So what happened after that?
So after that, May hooked up with Captain John Smuts. Smuts. So Captain John Smuts was a cousin of General Jan Smuts in South Africa. General Jan, and kudos for May picking the correct Smuts. But General Jan was one of the world's premier white supremacists in history. So she picked at least the one who was not that. So good job, May.
Also, Corvus says it was not the diamond. It's always the butler.
It's always the butler. Absolutely. They should have checked Simmons, or I don't know. I made up a name. So May and Captain John Smuts did not have a lot of money of their own.
What were they called as a couple?
The Smutses. They were called the Smutses.
The Smutses.
So, Captain John was South African, and so the pair traveled to Singapore, India, China, Japan, and they finally settled back in South Africa, where he was from. And then at the end of World War I, the Smutses decided, we're going to move to France because Captain John's going to fight and May's going to work in the nursing field, a battlefield nurse, and it's going to be amazing. We'll get some money. And then he couldn't get a military commission. So instead of going to France and fighting in World War I, they moved to Seattle, as one does. And when they got to Seattle, he found work as a shipyard worker, and they tried chicken farming and ranching in California. They tried lots of other small businesses, being a boss somewhere. And being a boss was not actually their forte. So the whole time, whenever they ran out of money, just like with her previous partners, May would return to the stage every so often. And
kudos to her for keeping that street cred, that
absolutely.
she could actually be like, hey, I'm coming back to the stage.
And they're like, oh, May!
Yeah. As a former person in the profession, that's actually pretty amazing.
Absolutely. So she would wear a replica of the Hope Diamond sometimes, which led to some confusion that she'd secretly lifted that from Sir Francis during their divorce. But I think that the reason she wore the Hope Diamond a lot during vaudeville performances was because she had a show that she did that was based on a rather unsuccessful 1921 movie serial mystery, The Hope Diamond Mystery, which she wrote and helped promote. And it was more successful on vaudeville, I think, than it was as a movie serial, probably because it had May, and May was pretty famous. But I assume that's why she was wearing the Hope Diamond so much on stage. So their last venture as the Smutses was an attempted tea room enterprise called the Blue Diamond Inn.
And Heather, what happened?
Well, it burned to the ground, all the way down.
All the way down.
All the way down.
Wow.
Yes. And May died in 1938 at the age of 69. Nice. Not so nice, actually. And the Hartford Courant.
I mean, she did.
She lived. Like, that was a 69 years of awesome.
And Heather has a great quote about that.
So the Hartford Courant, in her obituary, quoted May as saying, "I've done pretty nearly everything in my life except theft and murder." So, not thieving the Hope Diamond. "But thank God, whatever I've done, my heart's been in it." And after 1901, the diamond changed hands multiple times. Nope, that's not it. No, that's it.
That's it.
Okay. Eventually landing in the possession of Pierre Cartier, who sold the diamond to
Evelyn Walsh.
Evelyn Walsh.
All right, so Evelyn Walsh was a gold heiress. Her father, I believe in 1910, said, "Evelyn, we struck it rich," and they never looked back from there. At one time, the gold mines in Colorado that Evelyn's family owned produced $5,000 per day worth of gold. And once again, we're talking turn of the century here. So $5,000 then is exponentially more now. Evelyn was an absolute toot, according to history. She swiped creme de menthe from her father's liquor cabinet, squandered her allowance on ermine tails, and ruined the nerves of a series of hapless governesses. So pretty much was just a rich and entitled hoyden. By age 12, Evelyn had convinced her father to provide her with a carriage, horses, and a coachman so she could drive to school in style. So this is basically the 1898 version of the Little Red Corvette, is how I'm reading this.
Pretty much.
So Evelyn Walsh survived her childhood and nobody murdered her, which is surprising considering. And she married...
No murder, only theft. So unlike May.
Yeah. So she married Edward, commonly known as Ned Beale McLean, in 1908.
So before leaving Europe,
because they were in Europe on their honeymoon.
Yes. Evelyn remembered, oh, right. My dad gave me his leave to select a wedding present. Pretty much whatever I want.
So actually, something that I didn't write down is so each of their parents gave them $100,000 in 1898 money for their honeymoon, and they ran through it in like less than 4 weeks. And so Evelyn wired her father to ask for more money, and he sent her more money, and Ned wired his father to ask for more money, and his father was like, "You have a meeting in 3 weeks. Please make sure you're back in the States. Thank you."
Somebody was spoiled.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, because Evelyn suddenly remembered that she has this wedding present that she can get for herself,
She forgot all
about it. She went to Cartier via Cartier. I mean, that's where I go get my wedding gifts. That
always every single wedding gift that I've gotten for myself, I've gotten from Cartier.
Me too. 100% of them. What are the odds?
100%.
So she went to Cartier and explained her predicament, which was, "I need a wedding gift. Can you help me?" And Cartier was so happy to help her with this problem. And so she walked out.
Not with the Hope Diamond.
Not with the Hope Diamond.
We haven't gotten there yet.
But with the Star of the East, which she paid $120,000 for.
Well, her dad paid $120,000.
Well, she promised that her dad would pay $120,000 for it. And he did.
And they just let her sign a note and walk out with this like freaking egg of a diamond.
Yeah, because she didn't actually fork over the money. She was like, my dad's good for it.
Yeah. So,
but that was how it worked
that's
back
how
then.
it worked back then. But oh my god. So okay, so then we're gonna fast forward just we're just gonna skippity bit a little bit to 1910, and Evelyn was visiting Paris, and she had her first son, and Monsieur Pierre Cartier brought the Hope Diamond for a private showing at her hotel, at their hotel room, and this is where Monsieur Cartier definitely leaned on his salesmanship. Because he really, really leaned into the quote-unquote curse of the Hope, because Mrs. McLean had often said that she felt bad luck objects were good luck for her. So he was like, hey, this diamond has destroyed so many lives. It's going to be perfect for you. So Evelyn actually traded in some of her existing jewelry and purchased the Hope Diamond on the installment plan.
Layaway. She did layaway.
She did layaway for the freaking Hope Diamond.
No one told me this was an option.
I mean, I could do layaway for the Hope Diamond, but I'd have to be immortal.
Yes.
Because I'd be paying for the next 7,000 years.
I can pay you $10 a week until I pay this off.
Right?
Until my great niece
exactly
finishes paying.
So after she took possession of the Hope, she did take it to a priest, and she had it blessed. So, Ave Maria and all that. And from that day forward, she wore the diamond daily as a charm. Now, let me remind you, this thing is not small. Okay, the Hope Diamond is a big chunk of rock that she's now taken to wearing every day. And it's not just the Hope, it's in a diamond chain surrounded by diamonds. So, it's not small. So Mrs. McLean was and then she took to wearing not only the Hope, but also the Star of the East and a diamond link necklace all at the same time. And what she would say when people would critique her for wearing so much finery on a daily basis was basically, I'm going to need to pull them out at some point for a formal occasion, so I might as well wear them so I know where they are.
I mean, she did neck mess before.
She did neck mess, like, that's epic neck mess. But Heather, when Mrs. McLean needed some cash for a fly weekend, what'd she do?
Well, she liked to pawn the Hope. Just every time she needed liquid cash, she would just, go sell it briefly. If you're not familiar with pawning and how it works, you essentially go get a loan, and the pawn shop owners keep the collateral object as collateral until you pay them back.
Well, for a particular predetermined amount of time.
Yes, not forever. So she would go and pawn the Hope Diamond. Not once, not twice, but regularly. And there's the most famous story about this is William and Florence Simpson, who were very high-end pawnbrokers, because this wasn't, it's not Pawn Stars back then. This was something.
No, but they did write a book.
Oh, that sounds fascinating.
It's called Hawking It, I think.
Awesome. But there were definitely, like, pawning things now is a little more looked down upon than it was at that point. Like, when she was doing it, it was just a thing that you did sometimes. Not often with the Hope Diamond, but, it's a thing that people did. Even rich people sometimes needed ready cash, and it was the easiest way to get it. You couldn't get things wired and that sort of thing. It wasn't a thing, so... And just like now, a lot of rich people are rich on paper more than they are in real life.
Liquid cash.
Yes. So one of the most famous stories about the pawning of the Hope Diamond was William and Florence Simpson came to the McLean's home to see the Hope Diamond, and during their visit, Evelyn realized that she had entrusted Mike with the necklace. Now, Mike...
Who's Mike?
Mike was their Great Dane. I bet Mike looked quite fetching.
I'm sure.
In her little charm. But she treated the Hope Diamond as though it was just a piece of jewelry. Like, I find no flaws in her approach at all. So she was very generous with the Hope Diamond. She let children wear it at parties, and at one point was lending it out as something both borrowed and blue, because, I mean, yeah. When a former Navy wave, who was, the waves were women who served in the British services during World War II, right? Yes. So a former Navy wave married an amputee in 1945 and got to wear the Hope Diamond for that, which was pretty awesome.
I mean, you know. However, Mrs. McLean, and now we're going to circle back to the curse, because once again, what fallacy is that where you like take all of the facts and then like predispose them towards a particular cause?
Oh, I don't know the names of all the fallacies. I'm sorry.
Well, anyway, Heather, what good are you?
What? Not much.
But so Mrs. McLean did not.
I knew about Schweppes.
Mrs. McLean did not actually lead a charmed life, despite the fact that she had the hope, and a lot of the things that we've talked about have been very hopeful. No pun intended.
Hmm.
But I mean, her brother. But again, you all can be the judge of is all of this misfortune because of the Hope Diamond, or is it just because sometimes life is a sack of shit?
Especially during wartime?
So Mrs. McLean's brother died young. This is before she had ever encountered the Hope Diamond. Her first son, who was named after her brother, died in an auto accident at age 9. Her husband had numerous and lengthy affairs, and he was eventually declared insane and lived out the remainder of his life in a cottage at Shepherd and Enoch Pratt Hospital in Maryland. Again, the fact that he was wealthy is the fact that he lived out his life in a cottage at the mental hospital is a testament to the fact that he was wealthy and was not thrown in with the common rabble of that particular institution. And then in 1946, Evelyn's only daughter died from an overdose of sleeping pills, so obviously took her own life. This was the final blow for Evelyn. So whether you want to blame these things on the diamond or on the curse of wealth and affluenza or just random fate, her daughter's death was kind of the final blow for Evelyn Walsh McLean, and she died from pneumonia in 1947, but it is also commonly held that she died not only from pneumonia, that she not only died from pneumonia, but just from a lack of a will to live, because she had been dealt all of these emotional blows during her life. So what happened to the diamond after that, Hedda?
So the famous Harry Winston purchased the diamond after Mrs. McLean's death, and pneumonia. I love that. Harry, much like Mrs. McLean, had a very open. He didn't believe in locking things up and never looking at them. He believed in people seeing things and, important stones, things like that, being more a part of the public's cultural knowledge rather than just in a vault. So he sent the diamond all over the place on exhibitions. No word on whether any of them were sponsored by Schweppes, but probably some. And he would lend it out for society functions, and eventually it became the foundation of his dream to start a national collection of gems at the Smithsonian, which we talked about in the original Hope Diamond podcast. So it was the centerpiece of his donation to the Smithsonian Jewel Collection. And if the curse, which we have talked about how suddenly a lot of stories about the Hope Diamond sprang up immediately when Cartier was trying to sell it. The curse may have stricken again, because there was a dramatization of the diamond story, The Legendary Curse of the Hope Diamond. It was presented on television in 1975, narrated by Rod Serling. And Rod Serling died less than 6 months after the completion of the program. Now, you be the judge whether Rod Serling died because he had a really rough life, smoked 3 packs a day, probably drank heavily, actually had a job testing parachutes and ejection seats. I mean, do you think any of that contributed to his 3 heart attacks?
Nope, Diamond.
Killed him, or was it because he narrated the Hope Diamond special?
Diamond.
Definitely Diamond. I mean, that much is clear. But I'm just giving you the option to judge for yourselves. So that's all I'm saying.
Okay, so I know you did a little bit more research into some of the wackier legends of the Hope Diamond.
Yes, so I don't remember most of the names because the book is over there and I didn't write any of them down. But some of the wackier legends that most of them appeared around the time that Cartier was trying to sell the Hope Diamond.
What?
And by trying, I mean...
What?
Sold it easily. The person who stole it from the eye of an idol, he was actually very well known for being a good merchant. Like he would always pay his duties and all, and was in fact recognized for paying his duties. I keep saying duties. I know. I hear it too. But he was recognized so much by one of the people he was dealing with that he was rewarded with a special tunic and mantle and robe and everything. And
I want a special tunic and mantle and robe for paying my duties to the IRS.
I know, I do too, but does that really sound like the guy who would ransack an idol? First of all, also the Hope Diamond, not famously eye-shaped.
I mean, I'm just going to go back to the IRS, like, is the root of all evil.
I think it's not the Hope Diamond that killed Rod Serling, it was the IRS.
It was the IRS.
Yeah. So that was one of them. There was another one that, and the story about his demise was he died in Russia, torn apart by wild dogs, which... no one ever heard that story before. Like, he did die in Russia. They found his grave in Russia, and he died an elderly man in Russia. No word about wild dogs, but...
My favorite one is the one about the Greek man who... there was something about a cliff and people being pushed off of it, and, like, the last line in the book about that particular is that there is no factual evidence that this person actually ever existed.
Yes. And there was a lot of, because the diamond, went through the hands of the French royal family, and there was a lot about people who knew Louis XIV or Louis XVI or Louis XV, but most of them weren't Louis XV. They skipped Louis XV. It was mostly XIV and the Sun King.
Yeah.
But Like, for example, one of Marie Antoinette's friends, a princess, supposedly wore it and then was ripped apart by a French mob because of it. Now, the non-factual part of that was that the diamond before her birth had already been fashioned into a mantle of the Order of the Golden Fleece. So this was a king's thing, and there's no record of some random lady wearing some random lady, princess or not, wearing the mantle of the Order of the Golden Fleece. And unfortunately for her, very true part of that story was that she was in fact torn apart by a French mob, just not because of the Hope Diamond. I mean, and then of course, Louis says and Marie Antoinette were said to have been guillotined because of the curse of the Hope Diamond, and I posit that it's probably all the other diamonds too that were part of the problem, and the division of wealth and something like that. Something 1%? Yes. Yeah, something like that.
So she did this episode. I mean, lots of people dead. And again, we're gonna circle back before we do the outro to the fact that people like stories. I know that people like stories because there are people listening to this podcast right now.
It's true.
So
tell your friends so they can listen to stories too,
and tell them to listen to us. But like, people like stories, and some people, like for instance Evelyn Walsh McLean, will become fixated on the type of story that is attractive to them, and people who have vast resources will go to vast ends to acquire objects that support the stories that they believe in. The Hope Diamond is a mineralogical marvel. It is a giant, naturally sapphire blue diamond. It's beautiful. Is it cursed? Hi, Nancy. Is it cursed? You know, is it cursed in the eye of the beholder? Is it cursed in the eye of the otter? You know, it's a really, really cool gemstone, and it's got a whole lot of awesome history surrounding it, and that is something that's worth examining. Would somebody, you know, if somebody handed me the Hope Diamond, just like, here, have it, you know, I'd probably take it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I might get hit by a bus the day after, but I have at least a day.
Being hit by a bus with the Hope Diamond is better than being hit by a bus without the Hope Diamond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. So,
and that is a good point. Louis XVI, since we are actually English speakers here.
But, you know, it's interesting. It is interesting to examine all of the quote unquote curses and stories of all of the gemstones. And
I still blame the IRS.
I blame everyone who's ever stolen a gemstone from the eye of an Indian idol. Again, if you're going to believe all the legends, that's where they all came from, all the major ones.
All of them.
So don't, again, just public service announcement on the Beating Dream stream. Don't pry gemstones out of the eyes of idol. Just no. If you have to pry it out, just don't. It's not meant for you.
No, that's not yours.
I mean, if it goes like boing and lands in your lap, that's different. That's an Indiana
that was
Jones movie
bestowed
right there.
upon you.
But, you know, don't desecrate, don't steal, don't lie, and
put your heart into it on May's behalf.
yes. But, okay, so I think, Heather, do you have any more color to add?
No, just no theft, no murder, just
no theft, no murder.
put your heart into it.
Respect. So, alright, so that's going to be it for tonight's episode of The Button List. This is going to conclude the Hope Diamond. I'm going to find another fun gem for us for 2 weeks from today.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of The Button List with Allison
And Heather. You can catch the Button List weekly on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube.
You can also watch our complimentary live tutorials every Wednesday and Friday at 6 p.m. Central Time on Facebook, YouTube, and twitch.tv/feedingdreams.